Picture it. The year is 1995, and you have a movie set in Vegas, and you have one of the biggest writer-directors of the time involved with your movie, as neither a writer or a director. That seems like a good idea, right? Well, we're about to find out as we take a look at Destiny Turns on the Radio and prove to you that it's not just a movie of infinite possibilities. It's also not that bad. Welcome once again to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that takes a look at A grades in B movies. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're ready to dissect another movie that probably should have been dissected and left on the operating table. We are taking a look at Destiny Turns on the Radio today, and I have a very special guest. I may not have had a better guest in my life, and nor will I ever. Because guesting on today's show is my wife, Carrie. Carrie, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's almost like I haven't seen you in the last 2 minutes.
I know, right? It's kind of weird to say, hey, how's it going? When, we've been talking all day and locked down for the last 2 years. But hey, glad to be here.
And the nice thing is the fact that we can podcast together means we actually must get along because we've been locked down for the past year and a half pretty much together. So signs of a good marriage, right?
Or we've watched a lot of really bad movies.
Which leads us to this movie. Now, you were the one who brought up the movie Destiny Turns on the Radio. So why this movie?
Okay, I have to say that it really is not that bad. I love this movie. I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan. I have been forever. And I actually really do love this movie.
Now, I have to fully disclaimer on this one here, because I was looking around and trying to find a copy of the movie, and we have it on VHS, and you can't stream it anywhere. So we literally had to pull out the VHS tape. Now, which means as we get ready to trailerize this movie and get you all hyped up for what you're about to experience in the It's Not That Bad style. So, Carrie, I'm going to hand the reins over of the trailerize to you. So just grab that VHS box and trailerize it.
Destiny Turns on the Radio, a high-frequency adventure. Quentin Tarantino is Johnny Destiny, a mystery man with nothing up his sleeve but a readiness to gamble with everybody's lives. Rolling with Destiny's dice are Dylan McDermott as Julian, a con who busted out of prison looking for his hot cash and his red-hot woman, Nancy Travis as Lucille, a lounge singer and Julian's ex who plans on staying that way, James LeGros as Harry, Julian's superstitious partner who believes in fate in a form of a guy called Johnny, and James Belushi as Tuerto, a hotshot Vegas casino owner who made Lucille and can break her. They all share one thing in common. They're in the hands of destiny, and when destiny places a bet, you'd better roll the dice or they'll roll right over you.
Okay, I am in love with all the cliches. I don't know what it is. I do love a good cliche. Full disclaimer, this movie is full of cliches. It's almost like someone basically took all the cliches and put it into a script and filmed it. So let's give you a little bit of background on the film. All right, so it's released in 1995, starring as Carrie mentioned, Dylan McDermott, Quentin Tarantino as the titular Johnny Destiny. I love when they basically name a character that the movie is. It's like, all right, it's Destiny Turns on the Radio, and you're Johnny Destiny. Like, how do you sit there in a writing room and go, this is a good idea? Like, really?
What I would love to know is how the actors read the script and still signed on thinking this was a good idea.
Every actor in this movie deserves hazard pay, I think, for reading this going, if we just believe hard enough, we can make this work. But also starring Nancy Travis, James Belushi, and James LeGros. It's actually also the feature film debut of David Cross. Most of you will probably remember him from Mr. Show and as Dr. Tobias Funk from Arrested Development. We're also going to mention some other stuff that he was in a little bit later on, but David Cross, feature film debut is this one. I'm sure he doesn't put that on his resume. One of the things that I found interesting was that it's directed by a guy by the name of Jack Barron. Baran. This was only his second movie that he directed by himself. It was also his last movie that he directed by himself. The first one he directed was a 1971 film called Roommates. And then there was this. Like, how do you sit there and go, the last movie I directed was Destiny Turns on the Radio? And people will probably sit there and go, yep. Yeah, that's about it.
Although he does have under his IMDb a list of really pretty impressive movies, like The Big Easy, Single White Female, Kiss of Death.
Yeah, he was an assistant director or first assistant director on those, as well as Great Balls of Fire, which he also wrote the screenplay for.
That's right.
And Pronto, which was based on an Elmore Leonard book, which coincidentally also starred James LeGros from this film as Raylan Givens.
Okay, we definitely have to talk about a little piece of information I found about Quentin Tarantino, who, as we know, has a big history with Jackie Brown and Elmore Leonard novels. But what I did not know until today, I was today old when I learned that at 15 years old, Quentin Tarantino was actually grounded by his mother for shoplifting the novel of The Switch from Kmart. So another interesting fact that I read in deep diving on Quentin Tarantino is that he had vowed from that point that he would not share a penny of his movie money with his mother, who was non-supportive, I guess, of his young writing and screen ambitions. So
this is why we let our kids do whatever the hell they want. Yeah. Literally, like, just do whatever you want, kids, as long as you give us money afterwards, right? You want to play video games, you go ahead and do it. You want to write screenplays or make movies, you go ahead and do it. You want to hold up a bank, just give us a cut and we'll be fine with it. We'll tell the cops we didn't see you.
Because you just never know. And, I mean, there are infinite possibilities, as we've learned from this movie, so anything is possible.
This was actually the first film that was released by Reicher Entertainment. Now, Reicher Entertainment didn't actually have that long a history. They only lasted really from, they lasted from 93 to about 1999, but they only released movies from here, like 1995, all the way to 1998. The last, of course, being Christina Ricci's The Opposite of Sex. But there were some movies in there. I mean, 2 Days in the Valley is out there, and that's actually not a bad film. Kingpin's out there. Escape from LA. Like, we really needed a sequel to Escape from New York, but, bad movie, good soundtrack on that one. But they do have a list of decent movies, but yeah, if this is what you're starting with.
Although, previously known as Bing Crosby Productions, before becoming Reicher. So
There is a history there, but if this is how you're going to this is the new era, this is Reicher Entertainment, we're going to give you Destiny Turns on the Radio. We're sorry.
We're sorry.
we're sorry. As far as box office goes, I found this really interesting. So when this movie came out, it was in April of 1995. It came out the same weekend as Friday. Like the first Friday movie with, I can't remember who was in it. Friday, of course, had the biggest debut that week. When it came out. Of the movies that were new that week, this finished fourth of the new ones. It didn't even crack $1 million as far as box office in the opening weekend. And its total worldwide box office gross was only $1.2 million. Now, I don't know how much they spent on making this film. That may have just been Tarantino's salary as it is. So I'm going to assume that they didn't make any money off of this one. But let's get to the tomato meter, because this is how we determine what movie stays and what movie goes. So this movie has a tomato meter of 17% from the critics, and the audience score is actually 21%. So it's one of those rare instances where the audience kind of agrees with the critics. I mean, last episode for Mac and Me, the critics hated it, but the audience kind of had a love of it. So it's one of those things where you see that sometimes the critics say one thing, the audience just goes against them. But this one, they're kind of in sync. So I'm going to put it to you right now, Carrie, before we get into the breakdown of this. Is 17%, before we bust this one open, is 17% from the critics a fair guesstimate on this movie?
Not at all. I think, you know what? This movie you have to definitely suspend all expectations
And a few brain cells.
and just enjoy it for what it is. Again, I love this movie. It really has every bad movie cliche, and it just kind of rolls with it. Everything from the actors will deliver a line and then just magically, destiny really is guiding, whatever to transpire.
Quentin Tarantino is the MacGuffin of the film. Let's
Following
be
the
honest.
segue. Yeah, it's just, you know what? It's just a fun way to spend 2 hours.
Okay, so you talked about the acting. So let's get to the breakdown here. So I'm going to hand the reins over to you. What were some of the good things about the acting in this film?
Ooh. Well,
The look on your face says it all. You're pained just thinking about this.
I've been advised that if I can't say anything nice to just stay silent. But that's not why we're here. I think, you know what? First of all, Jim Belushi.
Yes.
Really, as Jim Belushi. I mean, Tuerto. He was your quintessential stereotypical casino owner.
The thing I like about Belushi in this one, though, is, and he does this a lot. He can play characters who aren't exactly, supposed to be likable, and yet somehow he makes them likable. Like, by the end of the film, at the start, he's just, this typical casino owner trying to pick Nancy Travis's songs that she's going to sing. And he's singing Viva Las Vegas, clearly after a night that they didn't have sex, and just smarmy. Just crotch grabbing smarmy. But yet by the end of the film, you sit there and go, he shows the humanity of
Absolutely.
Tuerto. Like, Jim Belushi is, I'd say, underrated as far as an actor to begin with. Obviously, he's had a number of big roles, so he's not that underrated. But he actually really took the dialogue, which was hurting to begin with, and really felt it and didn't make it seem camp or bad B-movie dialogue.
Right. He was the good fellow with a good heart. I think in the end, he was probably the most likable. I love Quentin Tarantino, and as Johnny Destiny, you see him appear on screen and you just know something's going down. Like, and it's so, I don't know. Everyone, I think it was such an amazing cast for what it was. And the actors, you had to have known that the lines they were delivering were just camp, and they just played around with it and made it fun.
It was a script with infinite possibilities. And if you haven't seen the movie, you have to see the movie to recognize that this is, one of those phrases that keeps popping up through the entire movie. It's a city of infinite possibilities. Like, everyone seems to say it. I've lost track of the cliches. But one of the other actors who actually made this to the dialogue, for the most part, bearable. There were scenes where you just sit there and kind of shake your head and go, "Oh dear God, please don't overact." But James LeGros, as Dermot Mulroney's buddy there, he actually
Thorough.
Thorough. He wasn't that bad. Like, I had never really seen him in anything else. I'll be honest. Like, you look on the front of the box, it's like, okay, I know Dermot Mulroney, I know Tarantino, I know Belushi and Travis, and who the hell is this guy, right? But he actually, there were times when I'm like, okay. Like, even when he's spitting out some of the dialogue that is just like, and we're going to talk about the script a little bit later, but, when he's spitting out some of these lines and you're sitting there, it's like, oh, dear God, you actually make this sound normal. Like, out of any other mouth, this would sound like I should be calling, the men in the white coats and they're going to bring you away. Like,
okay, spoiler alert, though. The minute that he said, I have a very bad feeling about this, you just know. Like, nothing good ever comes from the line, I have a very bad feeling about this. But let's just take a moment to talk about Bobcat Goldthwait.
Oh, God.
As Bobcat Goldthwait, as he ever was in any movie that Bobcat Goldthwait has been credited. he played an undercover, not so undercover, totally predictable cop. What is it? John Smith.
Yes,
John Smith.
Detective John Smith, which is actually his alias.
Nobody would have seen that coming.
Although he does have the most Vegas experience, I think, out of anyone in this movie. It's not really. I'm gonna spoil the scene. It's out in 1995. If you haven't seen it by now, screw you. Go watch the movie. So I'm going to spoil this anyways. So Bobcat Goldthwait basically spent most of the movie tied up with an apple as a ball gag on a bed. It's one of those, like, you know, put the quarter in vibrating beds. They went through about $10 worth of quarters to keep that bed vibrating. Bobcat Goldthwait, the Vegas experience.
Yet what they never addressed was how he got out of it.
I'm a little worried. I'm just going to pretend, because they did that was something that was kind of, did someone go in, take pity on him?
It had to be Johnny Destiny.
Oh, it's completely Johnny Destiny.
It was his destiny.
See, I could just pick. I wanted to see that scene now. I want to see, like, Johnny Destiny open up the door in his Tarantino best, going, I hate to see a guy like you in a situation like this. Now I could put another quarter in here, or I can set you free. What floats your boat?
It was the coyote.
Oh, God.
The coyote took the apple.
Because it was hungry.
Yeah, of course.
I
What's with the coyote?
Okay, when random animals start appearing and disappearing, you know, like, this is the point where the marijuana kind of hit when they were writing the film. And David Cross. Again, we mentioned that it was his first film. I will admit, it's kind of hard not to watch this movie and see him in it and not think that he's playing the exact same character that he played later on in Alvin and the Chipmunks as the record producer.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's almost like, watch Destiny Turns on the Radio and then watch Alvin and the Chipmunks. You recognize that it's the same character, basically, which means that Destiny Turns on the Radio is the prequel to Alvin and the Chipmunks. It's the Chipmunk verse.
Okay, thank you for that, because was Johnny Destiny not the prequel to Little Nicky's Deacon reprisal of Quentin Tarantino's role in Little Nicky?
I'm wondering if that's where he went at the end of the movie.
I think so.
It's a multiverse.
Right? Mind blown.
I actually didn't put Tarantino down on my good acting list, because it's one of those things where, and you're going to hate me for this. I don't think he's the best actor. He's a good director. He's a really good director, and I love the way he writes dialogue for his movies, but he directs his movies well and he writes his movies well. But when he's not the one in total control, it has a habit of going off the rails, a la Destiny Turns on the Radio, a la Little Nicky. Because I'm sorry, Little Nicky's going to get its own podcast episode, I think, because that movie sucks so bad.
Siskel and Ebert would agree. And that's pretty much, you had asked me earlier about the critic reviews, and pretty much every single, because you have to think about the time that Destiny Turns on the Radio. It's 1995. It was literally right in between the fame of the rising fame of Quentin Tarantino.
This is peak Tarantino.
Yeah, and interesting. He was starting to make a lot of waves with Reservoir Dogs. He had signed on the dotted line to do Destiny Turns on the Radio right before, literally in 1994, right before Pulp Fiction won at Cannes. So, who knows, right? Had it literally been the next month, this might not have been a Quentin Tarantino, starring Quentin Tarantino movie.
I mean, I wanted to like Nancy Travis in this. I did, because I loved her, and so I married an ex murderer. Like she's great. Not in this movie, but she's great, but not in this movie. She
is so talented. She's incredibly talented. And I think, very much her theatrical training from the Circle in the Square theater school really helped her in this role.
But she had that look. I mean, God love Nancy Travis, right? But she had that look. every time she was delivering like one of those lines of dialogue, right, where she's sitting there and the mouth is saying one thing and the eyes are saying, "Dear God, I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth in this order."
See, I loved that about her. I think that, you know what? She literally didn't even have to be saying anything at that very moment. All you had to do was just watch the screen and you kind of knew. You knew what was going on. And
She basically she stood there on camera and said, "I got pregnant from you by having sex with you in a dream," and didn't come off looking like a complete nut job.
Made it believable.
While Dermot Mulroney's on a slide in a playground at a drive-in movie theater. Oh my God, this movie is so Vegas. Those are my acting notes. Do you have anyone else on your good acting list?
Well, you know what? We covered so much ground. I think, okay, I have to give honorable mention to Vinny Vidovici.
Love the name.
Oh my God. The name, actually, interestingly enough, was a tip of the hat to Caesar's "We Came, We Saw, We Conquered." Mm-hmm. So, that in and of itself, I think when I read that, I had like chilly bumps.
I mean, the actor was horrible. But the character name alone, if you're not going to watch this for Johnny Destiny, you gotta watch it for Vinny Vici.
I think, you know what? It was so quintessentially a what you would expect of a Vegas talent agent. He had that like swarthy, eating copious amounts of food and sweating all over the place kind of. He had it down pat.
Constantly scratching his ass.
He had it down pat. However, what I did not see coming was the very quick turnaround of, him absolutely falling in love with Lucille after her performance.
Well, of course he was. Johnny Destiny was there.
Yeah, and it was absolutely destined from the start. But I mean, the music. Let's just take a moment to give nod as well to the two songs that Lucille had performed in this movie.
I had to look that up because
they were so good.
Yeah, I had to look that up because when she was singing the first song, Baltimore Oriole, mm-hmm. I'm like, the voice. You know how sometimes when there's a singer on screen and the voice doesn't match it, like it just doesn't fit. Right. And I had to look this up. So it wasn't Nancy Travis singing, so it was a singer by the name of Eleni Mandel. Before, she's got a number of albums out there on Spotify, but they picked, I think, the perfect voice for her, for Nancy Travis. Because, sometimes that happens, right? You got an actress, they can't sing. And it reminds me of Josie and the Pussycats. Because they had Kay Hanley from Letters to Cleo, and her voice, I think, fit Rachel Lee Cook's on-camera performance fairly well. And in this case, especially during the Baltimore Orioles song, Eleni Mandel's voice was a perfect fit for Nancy Travis.
Exactly. And let's give nod to that old black magic that literally had, it was that pivotal scene where, Johnny Destiny's going around snapping his fingers and everybody's having that turnabout moment. And I mean, again, the vocals and the words of the song fitting the scene were just absolutely perfect. The music is definitely, I think, the star.
And I know, like, especially in the beginning of the film where Dermot Mulroney wakes up in the desert like all good Vegas denizens have done at some point in time. And like for the first half of the film, the score is phenomenal. Like it's got like that almost dirty, not Lost Highway, but almost like you could picture Robert Rodriguez playing the guitar through the score. And then also, total shout out, Combustible Edison appears on the soundtrack for this film. And if you're a Tarantino fan, you'll remember that Combustible Edison was the group that did the soundtrack for Four Rooms.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what I wanted to point out was the opening scene was very, very, very akin to From Dusk Till Dawn. Mm-hmm. That scene with just like the 1969, was it Buick? I don't know what the car was.
Is it a 68 or a 69?
Oh, it was a 69.
It was a 69.
They determined that it was indeed Thoros old car. Anyway, again, not to spoil too much about it, but
Well, Dermot Mulroney kept on thinking it was a 68, but which you know what that means.
and of course, come on, the Roadrunner, beep beep.
Yeah, which if you think it's 68, that means you do me and I'll owe you one. And that's why we don't let the kids listen to this podcast. But yeah, so the music was actually really good. The script, I've made joke about the script kind of thing, and this was written by, and it was the first film by the writers Robert Ramsey and Matthew Stone. All right, not Matt Stone, not Matt Stone, Trey Parker, Matt Stone. So Robert Ramsey and Matthew Stone. So this was their first actual film that they had written. They actually went on to write Soul Men, which starred Samuel L. Jackson and Bernie Mac. So they have that Vegas showman style script, but if you like campy dialogue, if you like 50 cliches per minute of film kind of thing, it literally sounds like it's that trope, right, where every movie in Vegas, it's a mystical place where all angels have dirty wings and even the bad guys have good days. Like it's these very mystical, esoteric kind of Vegas is the be all end all kind of place. But did it not sound like some 1950s film noir? Like literally, like the script is, everything's a magical place and anything can happen here. And the Tarantino, like, Vegas, that's a city. It's like, yes, it is a city. It's not a state. It's not a county. It's a city.
But I have to imagine that would have been the draw for Quentin Tarantino, right? Like, I mean, can you imagine the pitch meeting? Okay, Mr. Tarantino, we have this script that you get to, show up and basically, with a snap of your fingers, have control of other people's lives and destiny.
I think one of the things that, maybe it's just me, right? But the script at times felt very much like it was a discount Quentin Tarantino script. Like, it's almost like as soon as they found out that Tarantino was going to be in the film, the writer said, okay, we have to make it sound like a Tarantino film. Which, yeah, when you watch a certain actors on screen, you want them to sound like themselves. Like, I'm pretty sure every scriptwriter has to change their dialogue the minute they find out that Christopher Walken is playing their character. Because, he's got to sound like Christopher Walken every time he says a word. But that's the thing. They write it for Christopher Walken, and it felt like they were trying their best to write Tarantino for Tarantino. And I'm not quite sure if it came off well. I mean, he sounded natural when he was delivering his lines, which means that Tarantino kind of put his all into it. So it shows that they were close. It shows that they watched Tarantino films and did their best to make Tarantino sound like Tarantino.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, with the, really badly attempted Southern accent. Mm-hmm. Like, it was like Quentin Tarantino acting as, I don't know, a stereotypical Quentin Tarantino from the South.
Dermot Mulroney's accent changed kind of halfway through.
Yeah.
Like anyone who complains about Elizabeth Olsen's, Sokovian accent, shut up, watch this movie, and then go apologize to Elizabeth Olsen. She does damn good job.
You know what? It's interesting too that as far as the writing, I just have to add this little Easter egg that at first when you hear it in the movie. Now, Gillian's dad shows up, Poppy, and you kind of don't know why he's there, but he does start talking about being diagnosed with having an overactive pineal gland. and it has it's completely out of left field, and you're kind of left going, what the hell does that have to do with anything?
Right?
However, doing some research on the pineal gland.
We're gonna get medicine here.
Right. So it actually is the base of the brain that's responsible for hormonal production and akin with melatonin and sleep.
Dr. Carey, medicine woman.
So two things with this. It can be related to an altered state of consciousness and heightened awareness. So again, very much in line with making this the script and a lot of things in this movie make sense. I feel it was actually, poignant to the script and also helps explain. Again, you mentioned that impregnating Lucille in a dream. So if it has if Poppy has this overactive pineal, which, it's later said that, Gillian might suffer from, it might just explain that scene and how it came about.
So let me get this straight. Dr. Carey, medicine woman here. Let me get this straight here.
I'm grabbing at straws here.
If you have an overactive pineal gland, you can impregnate women through your dreams.
Not exactly, but
which makes more sense than some of the dialogue in this film.
It's one step closer to explaining how the scene might actually become possible.
I could see someone now trying to use that as a defense, in some paternity case. And it wasn't me, Your Honor. I have an overactive pineal gland, and I've impregnated the entire neighborhood in my mind.
While they sleep.
I feel violated and dirty all at the same time. But yeah, and it's true. Like all of a sudden, Poppy shows up. Like I had that moment, like as if we were watching The Room. It's like, who the fuck is this guy? Like characters just kind of show up for no reason whatsoever. They don't motivate the plot. They're just there, spout out some like pineal gland bullshit, and then that's pretty much their job.
I disagree. I think there's more to him. I think there's a definite connection with that coyote that, was he attacked by it?
Did he impregnate the coyote?
And, let's not forget that he had, he probably had more insight of the pool of, what was it? There's
a big pool of glowing yellow liquid and people are sticking their feet in it. That's probably not what you want to do in Vegas.
The Devil's Watering Hole.
The Devil's Watering Hole. That's basically what that means. They peed in the pool.
I say that was just the predecessor to Hot Tub Time Machine, really.
They peed in the pool. It was glowing. It was yellow. They peed in the pool from his overactive pineal gland. Can we talk about the costume design for a second here? I mean, the set design, it's Vegas. They didn't really do much with Vegas except for, peed yellow into the pool for set design. But costume design. Who the hell dressed Dermot Mulroney? Like, you have to understand, I'm not quite sure whether he's a lounge cowboy, cowboy porn star. I'm not quite sure what he's dressed as.
Thoreau explained that. He explained where he got the, god awful. Yeah, cowboy?
People leave or people die, and he gets the stuff either way. Which is, I will fully admit, that's a great line for a movie set in Vegas. I thought that was. There's one of those like little script nuggets that was great, but it was gaudy. It was gaudy. But the costuming, it's one of those things with Vegas where you can go over the top with Vegas, or you can play it subtle, like these are just normal people who happen to live in Vegas. And surprisingly, they did very well by keeping it. These are just normal people that happen to live in Vegas. Yes, the cops were dressed like, with suits that looked like they were off the rack and probably off the wrong rack. That's just a trope. Nancy Travis, I thought her wardrobe, I think through this whole thing went really well. Again, you can go over the top with Vegas glitz and glam, especially for a singer in Vegas in glitz and glam. I thought that it was elegant. I thought it was subtle. I thought they dressed her perfectly for this. But costume design. Yeah.
And Bobcat Goldthwai's, John Smith was definitely wearing what you would expect of Bobcat Goldthwait playing an undercover cop.
While tied down to the bed with an apple ball gag in his mouth and vibrating.
Yeah, the amount of plaid that he combined was
he had plaid
brilliant.
on plaid.
Yeah.
Like that, he was basically wearing like the lumberjack orgy of clothing.
And the black socks with sandals.
While tied up to the vibrating bed with an apple ball gag.
Yeah.
Right now, people are listening to this going, oh, dear God, what the hell did they do to Bobcat? And no wonder we don't see him anymore. The editing, the sounds, like there wasn't really that much in the way of CGI and special effects and whatnot.
What are you talking about? The pool? With the lightning?
It was glowing in it.
Maryland motel?
You spend enough money in your own pool, you get it to glow. Just don't make it yellow. But as far as the directing goes, the cinematography, I found it actually very restrained. Like, I know movies that are done in specific decades kind of thing, they're going to have a look. We talked about this on the Macamee episode. 80s movies had a look. 90s movies around that time also had a similar look as well. But they didn't go super glitz and glam, which I found kind of interesting. The minute you put a movie in Vegas, you expect the bright lights and the fountains and all of the stock footage of Vegas that you can get. But it was very much Vegas by day.
Agreed. And even the casino. Having been to Vegas, it was almost kind of like this was a tiny pub, like just off of the strip that they had used for the location of their Vegas casino where Lucille, performed on that tiny wee stage. Like this was definitely North End Vegas. This was not.
Yeah, this was off the off strip kind of thing. But it's interesting when you go to places that are known for their nightlife, when you go to places that you expect to have a look, and we've traveled to LA and to Hollywood. Like when we traveled to LA, we stayed in Hollywood, and by night, Hollywood was kind of what you expected it to be. Nightlife, people on the streets, by day, Hollywood's very different, very freaking different. Like you sit there and go, oh, you didn't make it home last night. And you say that about every 2 blocks. Vegas by day is kind of like that same thing. You go out at night, you got people walking down the streets, you got people flicking cards at you kind of thing. Like Vegas by night is exactly what you expect Vegas by night to be. Vegas by day is very different. And especially when you get off the strip. When you're away from the action, and any Canadians who are listening to this, Niagara Falls is kind of the same way. You walk around main tourist area Niagara Falls. It's very much exactly how you expect it to be. You get off the beaten path of Niagara Falls and you're like, oh crap, where the hell are we? Right? So it's very different. And I felt almost refreshing to get away from the Vegas glitz and glamour.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there were times where I found myself, again, in the back of my mind questioning, are they in Vegas or are they kind of in, I don't know, like
Reno, if
Reno.
you will. Exactly. That's the thing, or Lake Tahoe or someplace other than Vegas, right? Still Nevada, but it's Vegas, right? So, but it gave it at least a bit of a signature look, and it felt like, when you think about, or when you go back and watch, say, like Pulp Fiction, right? The camera shots are very static. It's not a lot of shaky cam. They do put quite a bit of detail into the scene to kind of give you the setting kind of thing. And it felt like the director was very much trying his best. Like, that's got to be a weird thing. Like, it's your first film that you're directing in like over 20 years. And Quentin Tarantino, like, again, peak Tarantino era Quentin Tarantino is in your cast, and you have to direct him. Like, how do you sit there and like fight that imposter syndrome? Like, okay, he just won the Palme d'Or, and now I have to direct him. Who the hell am I to direct him?
That's an interesting point that I didn't even think of. Yeah, I mean, you know what? Like, I tend to wonder the other side of it, and like QT's, I don't know, like almost deep ingrained, want to like say, no, this is how this scene should go. Mm-hmm. Right. So you got to wonder, it would be an interesting thing to have looked back. And
I do wonder because, Tarantino does come across as classic Tarantino, right? He comes across as you would expect Tarantino to come across. So it makes you wonder if, like, as a director, do you give the director direction, or do you just sit there and let him Tarantino all over the place? Like, that's tough. That had to be a tough call at that point.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you wonder if James Barron maybe, I don't know, wanted to say, maybe we should try to cut that Southern accent and just be Quentin Tarantino. Just be yourself. Just bring yourself to the role. Please, for the love of God.
and that's the thing. Like, when you hear someone trying to pull off an accent and you're sitting there going, is this really right for the character? And it doesn't quite sound right coming in. Like, I've seen clips of Benedict Cumberbatch trying to do like a Southern accent, and it sounds weird coming out of him. I've seen David Tennant try to do an American accent, and it sounds weird coming out of him. Like, I want the Doctor to sound like the Doctor. I want David Tennant to sound like frickin' Scrooge McDuck, okay? Do I want Tarantino to try to sound like some, mystical Southerner that happens to be the MacGuffin of Vegas? I'm not quite sure, but that's got to be a tough call.
But I think, I don't know, maybe, knowing the script and kind of running with it, I think it worked. I mean, it definitely, there were parts of the movie where I think just that little bit extra kind of made it a little more legit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, Quentin Tarantino, now that I look at it, in that role of Johnny Destiny as Quentin Tarantino, waving his arms and talking frantically at a mile a minute about, oh my God, this scene has to be this and it has to speak to you this way. And we're going to kill every motherfucker in the room. Like that. It would not have fit the role of Johnny Destiny. Mm-hmm. And I think it was almost kind of like a more subdued version of Quentin Tarantino. And I think it worked. Again, I love this movie.
See, now I want that scene where Johnny Destiny goes to Bobcat Goldthwait's motel room and it just opens the door, sees Bobcat like on the vibrating bed with the ball gag, and just want him to go, all right, time to bring out the gimp.
Because that would have worked perfectly.
Oh, dear God. Okay, so it's time. It is time to name our MVP of the film. So, Carrie, I'm going to hand the reins over to you. Who is your MVP of Destiny Turns on the Radio?
Ooh, I've got to go with Quentin Tarantino. I think, you know what? This movie would not have been the same with any other actor in that role. I can't possibly have pictured it being... I probably wouldn't have endured the 2 hours if it weren't Quentin Tarantino. So I do have to give him mad props.
I think for me, the MVP is Jim Belushi. Because, again, I love Jim Belushi as an actor. I think, especially in the 90s, like James Belushi in the 90s was very much like, again, at his peak. Like, he has a way of just not necessarily, stealing the scenes, but, soaking up what dialogue he's given and making it seem like, yeah, that's exactly what this character would say. It makes you feel for the characters that maybe you're not supposed to feel for. Even the scene where he's trying to justify grabbing his crotch, rather vociferously, if I must say, it actually sounds normal coming out of this character because he's established that this character's a little over the top to begin with, but not in a manic, psychotic kind of way. It's just like, yeah, I'm a Vegas, casino owner, and I live large, and I speak large, and I grab my crotch. Why? Because it's large, right? That's probably what he's saying with it too. But, but by the end of it, though, there's this scene where he's sitting beside the girl that's crying. I can't remember what her name is, and he's just so withdrawn and like inner emoting, and all of a sudden you've gone from like, I'm not sure how I feel about this character. He seems kind of smarmy. He's not the kind of character you kind of like. By mid-film, he's like, okay, I kind of feel for him. He's kind of in a no-win situation. And by the end, it's like, just to watch him, inwardly emote and be able to like inwardly act, you've completely redeemed this character from whatever you felt from him, horribly singing, Viva Las Vegas at the beginning, to like all of a sudden not blowing up at Nancy Travis for choosing Dermot Mulroney, not blowing up at his world kind of falling apart, but just inwardly accepting reality, and making the best of, and just almost paying it forward.
I agree. I think there was a bit of a childlike characteristic to him. Mm-hmm. And I think you kind of see him as, almost like a 10-year-old with way too much money and way too much time on his hands. Mm-hmm. And in a position of, he's supposed to be authoritative. He's supposed to be the bad guy. Again, he's like the good fella with a good heart,
he's the big Vegas mover and shaker, like a teddy kind of bear. Thing. Like, the trope would be for him to like, okay, Dermot Mulroney took my girl, I'm going to shoot him, bang, bang, one's in the kneecaps, right? But he didn't.
That would make it a Tarantino film.
Right, exactly. Not a Jack Barrett film. It's a Tarantino film at that point. You expect him to like, screaming at Nancy Travis and all that, but in the end, all he wants is for her to be happy. So even though he's cashing in her chips, right? But he still wants her to have a good life. Like,
agreed. And yeah. I think he kind of knew. I mean, if you really look back on their relationship, he had to have known, going into it. 3 years ago, she was Jillian's girl, and she would always kind of hold that place, or he would hold that place in her heart. Mm-hmm. And I think he kind of knew maybe that she wasn't she wasn't playing with her full deck. She wasn't in it to win it. Her entire heart wasn't in. And I just threw out like 2 cliches right there. So I think I'm actually inspired, and
your mind has been it's your overactive pineal gland. Now before we get final thoughts on this film, I do have to point out, because we watched it today before we recorded this, and went to our corners, wrote our notes kind of thing, but I had to go back and double check, and yes, Johnny Destiny did actually turn on a radio in this movie. So the title isn't just, it's Destiny turns on the radio. No, he actually did turn on a radio at some point. So, prophecy fulfilled, the movie, it put forth what it actually said it was going to do. So final thoughts on this film. Destiny turns on the radio. Is it not that bad?
I love it. I hold firm in that, I love the campiness of it. I also, aside from being a huge Quentin Tarantino fan of his entire catalog, both of directed and written screenplay and acted, whatever. If it has Quentin Tarantino, I'm all for it. Damn, where was I going with that? I love road trip movies. And I'm very sure that we'll probably wind up talking about my, movie collection later on. But
by the way, she's not picking the next movie.
But this movie, again, it started out, this hitchhiker found in the Las Vegas, Nevada desert, and meets this Johnny Destiny, who always kind of seems to be in the right place at the right time, as it's destined to be. But it had that road trip it had that karmic value that you're like, oh, okay, so there has to be more about the relationship and the dynamic, and then you get to know the past history of, why these characters all kind of connect, and I think it's great.
I
can't be fun.
I will admit that I would love to somewhere down the road see Quentin Tarantino revisit the character of Johnny Destiny, but he's a radio DJ, and he's spewing all of this, like total cliche, but like it's a call-in show, and like he's basically, telling everyone what they need to hear, even though he's never met them, and somehow he knows, because Johnny Destiny is your destiny.
The Vegas Files.
Destiny on the radio, literally. There's the sequel that we need. Destiny on the radio.
You know what? I would love if they made a sequel, because I want to know what's on the other end of that pool.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know where they went.
Where does the pee go when it gets flushed down? Yes. And now, if you're actually thinking of watching this movie, good luck to you. It is hard to find. Again, the movie's actually been it was never put out on DVD. It's basically been discontinued. So if you ever find a copy of this is one of those movies where if you find a copy still in the packaging, hold on to it, because somewhere down the road, people are going to be like, oh, that Tarantino guy, well, I heard he acted occasionally, all of a sudden you've got this copy of that film. So it's the kind of movie that might actually somehow be worth some money someday, because it's one of those things that has been discontinued. But if you find it, good luck. It's probably going to be on a VHS.
Like our 99-cent VHS find.
Oh God, yeah. I think we found that I think it was a Video 99.
Yep.
It wasn't a Blockbuster. It was a Video 99.
In a random movie bin of discarded, probably like classic gems.
Oh yeah, you had to picture the
Gold.
scene. Like I'm one of those guys that, like, you see like a video store at the time, or a UCD shop or a used book shop, and like, honey, we're gonna turn in here because I need to look at the bin, because I'm that guy. And she's like, okay, because she loves me. And we go to the bin, and it was almost like like Simba being held up for the jungle to see. Like,
it was like the suitcase in Pulp Fiction when it opened, and all you see is that golden glow.
Which was clearly water from the pool at the time.
Yes.
See, it's a Quentin Tarantino universe. Destiny Turns on the Radio is part of the Tarantino verse. All you needed was someone smoking some Red Apple cigarettes and you'd be fine.
I like it.
Carrie, thank you so much for this. I'm sorry that you made me watch this film again, but you know what?
I'm not.
Next time I'm picking the movie. And you're not going to like it. I can tell you that right now. But to our listeners, thank you so much for listening to this episode of It's Not That Bad. Look, if you want to find us on Twitter, you can find us at Not That Bad Cast. Okay. And if you have a movie that you would love for us to take, break down, dissect, and find only the good things about. If there's a movie that you want defended, or if there's a movie that you think is beyond defensible, let me know. Not That Bad Cast on Twitter. Let me know. We will subject ourselves to it and work our way through it. This has been It's Not That Bad, the podcast. My guest today, Carrie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will catch you next time. Take care.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, Skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.